Welcome to CCX, Cross Country ComX. We've got our hosts Dustin and Lee and myself, and our guest today is Morgan Quaid. Hello, Morgan.
Hello, Morgan.
Good morning. Good morning. Sorry. That's about
Good shame.
Good morning.
Yeah, and good evening to Dustin.
Oh yes, good evening, of course.
I'm always the oddball out. That's all right. Most of my fans are watching it at night anyway, so it's okay. You know what I mean?
All good.
Well,
I just realised my beard's getting that long. It's nearly off the screen. Bloody hell.
You know what?
Impressive.
I don't want to talk about beards right now. Okay.
Oh, I know. I know. The razor blade slipped.
I don't talk about it at all.
That's why I don't shave it, mate. So, because I'd imagine me going a bit, oh, hello,
I cut it short. That's about it. Can't come off. I look like a little round soccer ball type. It's just I look chubby as all hell when I take the beard off.
Well, I got no chin. I'm just doing this to throw people off. If ever I'm in a fight, like I can get there and they swing one at me and when I go, ha, because there's actually my chin right there. Have a look at that. So if I had a shave, I barely got a head. So.
You need a top hat or something to even it out if you're going to get rid of that. Just
Well, yeah, I can't do much about that, mate. So I've just given in with that. What do you do? I've tried everything. So not really, but here's what it is.
So
I wear a hat to hide it.
You ever had a sunburnt, bald head?
Exactly. That's why I wear a hat.
Oh, dude. God damn. That thing hurts, eh? I made the mistake once of going out and doing some yard work. Next thing, my head's red like beetroot, and I'm like, oh.
I came on today and I was going to be so behaved. You quit messing with me, Lee. Today super behaved. You better stop.
I would
ask this man about his gig and what he's got going on. You're gonna make me laugh too much tonight, or say something dumb, which is usual for me. You know what I mean? So Mr. Quaid, what is it that you're working on currently? I see you got a lot of instruments in the background, which is amazing.
Yeah, a lot of music stuff. That's always on the go, but that is kind of more behind the scenes. I do a bit of music for film and TV and that sort of stuff, but. Sweet. People ask, where's your stuff? What shows are it in? Are the music in? And I've got no idea, to be honest. Most of the time, in Australia, you don't until recently find out where it's popped up. So I generally just make shit up. Whatever's the current, the show that everyone's watching. I was in Game of Thrones. I was in, the other one. I don't even know what's current. Anyway. Yeah, so I do a fair bit of music stuff.
For sure.
And then obviously the comics and the writing and all that.
Tell us about the comics. That's exciting. That's what we're into. So tell us about the comics, man. What do you got going on?
Yeah. So at the moment I've got a Kickstarter, as pretty much everyone does, on a project called Enmity, which is, I had to train myself how to pronounce it because it's a real mongrel of a word to say, right? Enmity.
Enmity.
Like,
gotcha. Okay.
Capital M. Yeah. I used to say it with the M first, and
gotcha.
Yeah.
It's
so why you?
That's one of those words. I feel like English, especially modern English, has a lot of words that didn't translate well from the Romance languages when they came over. So people, when you go to say it, it's just kind of like duh. But,
yeah.
Especially when I say it
all the time.
I was going to say that's what I was going to say. That's what you normally.
We've got an excuse, Shane. There we go. It didn't translate.
I'm sticking with that one.
Absolutely.
Too many consonants.
When I start talking about chooks. So.
So Morgan, I'm seeing you're giving it a fair run, mate, with the advertising. It's popping up on my Facebook a bit, so congratulations for getting it out there. Now, the other thing is that... No, that's all good. No problem, mate. Now, I noticed that you've had some little motion ads too, like with music.
cool.
And varying things. There was one in particular with your main character, the young lady that is, if I'm correct, Lucifer's daughter. And I saw it this morning, and there were these dudes with, teeth and that coming out of the dark, like towards her, and then she pops up out of nowhere and boom, and says something, and I was like looking at that this morning, and I was like, wow, that's really cool. So do you do that yourself? While we're talking about music, is the music that's in it your music, or is it somebody else's? Like, what's your whole approach to this, man? Are you 100% like, I'm going to bang out a ditty, like over the top of my ad, or, like what's your entire creative sit down, bang, this is what I'm going to do?
Right. Well, yes, it's definitely about the ditties. So I do everything I can, A, because I'm cheap, and B, because I've got everything set up. So I've got the video gear, I've got obviously the music stuff behind me. So I like to, every project that I'm doing, do an album with it. Again, because for me, it's super cheap and it's super easy, and I love doing it. I love kind of pairing music with the visual stuff. And then the little video intros and those sorts of things, I just love that stuff. I mean, if I had the time and the energy and the money, I would just be turning everything into, animation effectively, because it just, sure. I love constructing it, almost thinking like, if this was a trailer for a movie, how would it look, and all of that sort of stuff. Wow. So yeah, most of it I did myself. There's one on the campaign page which has a female voice at the front. That was a friend of mine, Kathy, that did that voice, because she's Canadian, but it was close enough to get away with kind of American. And when I do a female accent, it always ends up like an old witch from a fairy tale. I can't do gnarled fingers and warts and stuff. So. Yeah, so she helped with that, but yeah, pretty much everything else that I did. So this project has an album with it, and the music you hear in the background is the theme song on that album. And the theory behind it, the way I've sort of cast it, is there's a intro song and then an outro song, which is the same as the initial one, but it's done with cellos, so it's more of a mellow kind of vibe than the initial one. It's got the gritty guitars and all that sort of stuff. And then in the middle, it's a bunch of songs that I'm saying the main character would be listening to. So she's walking around in an apocalyptic sort of wasteland, and this is the kind of stuff she would like. Mainly because no one can question it. I mean, what are they going to say? No, she wouldn't. Come on, how do you know? Of course.
I mean, I applaud you for doing the video, because of the fact that a lot of people right now take it for granted. And I mean, when you get on Kickstarter, you look at Kickstarter, and it literally tells you at the beginning of it, the largest percentage of backed projects are ones with videos. All right, that's one of the first things it says. And I coined it a long time ago that it was going to be the standard for the industry. It was a conversation we probably had 6 months ago, and I was like, it's going to start coming up. It's going to start cropping up everywhere that does projects. So if you look, even Marvel is putting them out for the Eternals right now. So it's very relevant in this day and age, in the projects that we're trying to push, especially comic books right now, to make sure you're on the curve, of everything, the cusp of everything that's going on, and moving with the flow of things instead of fighting against it. Because there's a lot of people that are like, oh well, I don't need a video, and da da da. In reality, you really do. You need a video. You need a couple other things. It looks like your stuff's doing really well though, and it's awesome that you're doing your own music. I think that's so cool. I mean, because I keep looking at stuff going, holy shit, I wish I knew like a metal band for my books. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, because I feel like metal would just like roll right off with almost every title that I put out. So
this is the benefit of because what I do with my music stuff, I work with a lot of indie musicians and session musos and all that sort of stuff. For sure. So if I need something that I can't do, I'll grab one of them. So there's another project I'm working on with an artist friend of mine, and he wanted that really dark, broody, cinematic kind of airy guitar sort of stuff. Yeah. And that's not really my thing, but I know a guy that's great at it. So I got him to do some stuff, bring it in. It's fantastic.
Yeah, for sure. I know a guy that knows about chooks, so I'm going to bring some of those into my book.
Yeah.
So might do that. But yeah, it's all about networking. What you can do for each other, if you can help out somebody with this and they can bring into this to your stuff, like ES and I are doing some cool stuff right now. I've found that like shipping to Australia is god awful, and shipping out of Australia is just as bad. But there's a loophole. There's loophole shipping out versus shipping in that you guys may have found that a couple of people know about now. It's like the heavy, what is it? Heavy parcel. If you ship out heavy parcel goes out for a certain cost versus what you would send individual pieces. So like I distribute for a couple of friends of mine that ship it out of Australia, as a heavy parcel. So I get this big ass package, then turn around and they pay me the difference for, putting their books out. Either that or they just do something cool for my books, you know what I mean? Which works just as good for me. But it's great that there are ways, because I know that the countries, they're really doing terrible things with shipping and stuff. We have to understand, we got to get past all that, because the world is one place nowadays, man. It really is. We got to get past all the shenanigans. You got the internet, you got TV. I know there are countries that keep the internet to however they want their internet and stuff. But at the same time, folks are going to talk. You're going to get product from other countries. Man, look, it's real simple. Don't make it hard. You know what I mean? So tariffs and all that bullshit, if it comes in and it's worth more than $100 or whatever, people get fined, whatever it is they charge. Like when it's going to the UK, you send something, it costs like $50 more US. If it's worth more than, a certain amount of money, they flag it when it gets there. Stuff like that's absolutely ridiculous. But just, helping each other out makes a world of difference. If you can bring in cool stuff like that. Look at Shane. Jesus, Shane has got like an empire he's building currently.
I wouldn't say that.
Mate, I was talking to Shane late last night after the Friday drink and draw, and I was listening to those guys while I was drawing, and an old veteran of the comics industry, Dave DeVries, was talking about how back in his day they used to have to phone each other, like for, what did he say, Shane, like $3.60 a minute and stuff, just to discuss with the artist what the writer was doing. And, and the world is closer now. And then I just was thinking last night, and I thought, from what Morgan's talking about, Dustin, the help, what Shane's developing, that sort of thing. I mean, really, essentially, community is unity. And like
go poet on me, Lee.
Yeah, well, I've got a little bit of it in me, mate. Like not much, but that's what I like hearing, mate. I love hearing stories like Morgan already. It's triggered me this morning. A total do-it-yourself man. Like for what you want to do with your project, but like you're also there as an individual that people can come to suggest, for suggestions, or where can I, find this, or can someone help me? And, wholeheartedly, you're like, yes, I know this person that can assist you and stuff. Dustin's the same. Shane's exactly the same. And I'd like to think that I also, am the same with that. So kudos for people that, all backing that sort of do-it-yourself method of work. And the community is a great thing, regardless of America, Canada, all over the world. We are all united, mate, with this wonderful thing called the internet.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to, and being able to use that is amazing. Like Morgan, I'm sure that you've done it with music. You could actually share sessions with people versus, having to try to describe something to somebody across the world or send them a WAV file or something. You can literally go, hey, look, I wrote this riff the other day. It sounds really good. What do you think? Versus having to struggle with it. I can only imagine. But so this book, Enmity. Now, for those of you that don't know what enmity means, I'm going to let Morgan tell you because it's very prevalent to his book. So we're going to get him to say it again and make sure he doesn't do it again.
Enmity. I have to say it. I have to picture it in my head to say it right.
So do I.
Enmity. So the way I would describe it is antagonism between two forces or two individuals or two whatever it might be, a clash between those two, or it could be, you know, two ideas. I suppose the central idea behind the enmity story is taking the idea of Lucifer, you know, the devil, that sort of character, but slightly off kilter, slightly different to the devil that we, you know, traditionally know in you know, Christian mythology and all that sort of stuff. And essentially the devil or Lucifer is the one that counterbalances good by whispering in people's ears and, you know, in the halls of power, making people do, you know, bad things so that the good and evil kind of balance each other. But essentially Lucifer is in that position where, like many of us for many years, I'm guessing, he's been in a job that he just doesn't like at all. He's sick of it. He's been doing it for thousands of years. It doesn't seem to make any difference to anything. He doesn't even talk to his boss. He doesn't know where his boss is. So he just quits, goes on a bender, drinks himself silly, you know, goes nuts on drugs and all this sort of stuff, sleeps with women, you know, yada, yada, all that sort of bizzo. And then as a result of that, one of those women gets pregnant. And then 16 years later, we have this character named Daisy that pops up, who is his daughter, but doesn't know that she's his daughter. And so you have this kind of post-apocalyptic kind of world that blossoms as a result of Lucifer no longer wanting to do his job, because instead of someone like Lucifer, who's a bit of an artist, he knows his craft well, he's been doing it for years, he's subtle, something happens, he leaves, and the being that they get to fill that void is a bit of a bludgeon, you know, like a blunt instrument, and so that causes the balance to be shifted and all that sort of stuff.
For sure.
Yeah. So that was the central idea. That the central idea was, what if Lucifer just quit his job, and what would the impact of that be? But the thing, I suppose, that gives the story a bit more heart is, because that was originally going to be just the idea, and it just wasn't enough. I love the idea of a daughter searching for her deadbeat dad.
I can think that. You know, sadly, this world has a lot of that. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that can, I'm sure, vibe with that type of thing, like searching for their dad or looking, you know, for a family member. And it's going to sound, I'm not trying to sound misogynistic, but at the same time, you know, you look for that male role model. You know what I mean? As a young person, whether you're a boy or a girl, you look to your father or to your mother, you know, to guide you, you know. So people that don't have it, it's like a void in their life. You know, they make that joke about daddy issues. You know what I mean? That's a lot of that stuff in this world, because, I mean, it's very prevalent. So it's interesting that you went that route with it. I think that's a lot of fun. Not that it's fun for those people, but it's fun because of the fact that people can relate to it. You know, in this industry, original, we talk about this a lot. Original stories are what drives the indie industry. If you come in and you're like, hey, look, I wrote Superman again. I'm just over here and I'm gonna let Lee talk the whole time because I'm just like, oh Jesus, you know, and it's cool. You know what I mean? It's cool that you wrote Superman that made you happy. You know what I mean? I'm about that. You know, if you're happy about
That's where we'd be in an impasse, mate, because I'd be like, oh, not another Superman. I'll let Dustin do all the talking. It's up to you, Shane.
It's up to me. Oh, great. Superman.
Yeah. But it's like, when you talk original stuff, it's very interesting. You know what I mean? Like, right now on Kickstarter, I could name a bunch of cool stuff that's going on. You've got Life on Korra that's really cool right now. You've got well, Belial's not on there right now, but you had Belial on there, which is also a Lucifer-esque story that my buddy Chuck did. You know, but there's a lot of cool stuff in that realm. You know, and that's the most interesting thing about it. All these people that are using this character, okay, differently. You know, and that's what's so fun about it. Like right now, if you were to read my book, when you get to Lucifer in my book, he's having at it with Hades because he's trying to keep balance. But Hades exists at the same time in my book, and he wants Lucifer's job. You know what I mean? So they're going at it back and forth. And you eventually have a void that someone's got to fill. but it's interesting the way that people come at it from a different perspective, you know, that makes it, hey, look, this is a lot of fun. Or it can be that same old, like, I'm a big fan of Jack Black, you know what I mean? But that movie, The Pick of Destiny, really, really great. And you get Lucifer, and he's just like this stereotypical, you know, big horn demon guy that wants to, you know, to rail one of our heroes, you know what I mean? So it's not great that he wants to do that. But if you take things like, if you look at Little Nicky and the difference, you know, the difference with Lucifer and Little Nicky was a very interesting character, you know, aside from the fact he was sticking pineapples up people, you know, that probably deserved pineapples, you know what I mean? But it's interesting. If you can get that hook in, man, if you can get the hook in, you know, set the hook, it's just like, man, the minute you started talking about, you know, the young daughter of Lucifer, now everybody's like, oh man, what is the daughter of Lucifer like? You know, what kind of character is that? You know, we all know Lucifer. We've all seen Lucifer. You know, deadbeat Lucifer, well, that's cool. But daughter of Lucifer now, what is up with that? You know, so you're immediately intrigued by one thing or another when it comes to original content. You know, just because it's like, are you familiar with the Sentry, Morgan? The Sentry, the character?
No, but I'm really new to a lot of this stuff.
Okay, so Marvel Comics put out a character, and they made him their most powerful character in their universe. His name is the Sentry.
He was originally presented, if I'm correct, in the 60s for a few brief issues, wasn't he? And then they revamped him in the early 2000s. And
he was that character that no one gave a shit about. He really showed up, no one cared. You know, he was a Superman clone, no one cared. So they brought him back. The biggest thing they brought him back for was the World War Hulk. When Hulk came back from Planet Hulk and was literally killing, well, not killing, beating the tar out of everybody he got his hands on that blamed him for the loss of his family and stuff on the planet that he had gone to. Anyway, so the Sentry comes in and they go, all right, well, we got to change him just a little bit. So they make him your surfer blonde, and they give him this like big old S on his chest, just like Superman, big old S for Sentry. And he's yellow and blue instead of blue and red, you know, same type of outfit, same deal, but he's agoraphobic and scared to come outside. So it was such an interesting way to make him that much different. So you were like, oh man, this guy's really, really strong. Oh, but he's a Superman clone. But he's different, you know what I mean? He's a little bit different. And he comes out and he goes toe-to-toe with the Hulk and the maddest the Hulk's ever been. You know, and for those of you that are watching, the Hulk gets stronger the angrier he gets, you know?
Certainly does.
So he's literally going at it with a guy that's got the power of multiple suns in his body, you know? And it was interesting to see how they brought him back. The fact that Hulk threw the fight was also interesting. But there's a lot to be said about original content, you know, just a little bit different. You can have a character, but as long as you make it your character when you write it, you know, that's the key point about it. If we get this book and we go, oh yeah, Morgan wrote that, and it was a lot of fun, you know what I mean? We know it's Morgan's writing style. We know that's his type of character, you know, that's really cool. Like when you start putting out like Battle for Bustle, right? You can pick up any issue of that book right now. Or I can anyway, because I'm a fan. But you can pick up any issue and be like, that's Battle for Bustle. Even if you didn't see the cover, you know what I mean? Even if you're just getting kind of the idea of what's going on, you can go, oh man, that's Lee's book. You know that's Lee's book. You know, and that's very powerful in this industry. You know, when you're just coming into it, you have to put your stamp. Your stamp needs to come out and be like, oh yeah, you know, this is my book. It's enmity. It's a lot of fun. Like, who do you got with cover artists?
I got 3 artists that I've worked with on other projects. So they're all overseas artists. Willie Roberts is my mate in Argentina that we're working on another project together with. He's done one of the covers. There's Moses May. He's does another cover, and there's another project that I'm going to be launching later in the year that's he's working on. So I've got a few. They're all indie artists, and they're all artists I've worked with for a few years on other projects. But it's this issue where, you know, I've got 6 or 7 things in the pipeline, but you can't just release them all at once because otherwise,
Absolutely.
Nothing will happen. But it's interesting that you said that as well, though, because one of the things that always worries me when I'm writing, because I'm never writing, I find it difficult to write one thing, so I'm always writing 5 things at once, and like a lot of writers.
Absolutely.
And the thing that worries me is you come up with a new character, and I know I have a type, particularly with a male character and even a female lead. I tend to have a character. I want them to be a smart mouth. I want them to be fairly casual in the way that they approach things, very powerful, but also to have some sort of big flaw or something.
For sure.
And
so
that's
Morgan
what worries,
Quaid stereotype. Morgan Quaid stereotype is what you create.
Yeah, and that's, I've always worried about that, because then at the moment I'm building a new character and I'm thinking he's too much like the other guy that I've got. I need to do something different, or yeah.
I think that's a real big almost like a pitfall for a lot of writers, you know what I mean? Because you write a certain way, so you get in your, just like artists do it too. I mean, my team's done it. We've had to go over things, you know what I mean, or one of my teams. But it's like when you're like, say you take a cartoonist, right? You take a cartoonist, but you want a cartoonist to draw very, very seriously. You don't want him to draw like a cartoon. He's a real good artist, but he's a cartoonist. So now you're like, oh, this is really good. And then you get in and it starts slipping back into habit. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with writers. We go in, and the only thing that saves me, I'm writing 3 IPs right now. I have 3 books running. So and they're all bi-monthly. So you're literally getting my books back to back to back. So it's literally like, my fear though, and the thing that saves me from that particular pitfall, is my books are so different. Like they're so different, you know? And I think that helps. If you do a project that is out of your comfort zone, you know, that's a little bit different than what you're currently doing, that can stop you from catching that trope, if that makes any sense, because you're not writing the same type of character. You know, you know, like you mentioned, you like the smart ass stuff and da-da-da-da. You can do that in a different way. Like, let's say that you write about a mathematician. All right, you've got a mathematician character, really, really smart guy, thinks everybody else is a dumbass. Like, they're all stupid except for him. You know what I mean? And that's a great way to put that same vibe out, but not be the same character. Like, you may have a punk, you know, like an actual like 80s punk, like old school punk, you know, and he may just not like this type of group of people, or he may not like the government or anything like that, but he could be snarky and stuff in a funny way, but not in a mean way. And you still get to put your stylist, you know, your type of writing in there. But I think that it all comes down to the fact that the more you do it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lee, but the more you do it, the easier it gets. Like, I mean, and that's what it seems like. I felt like my first book was so emotionally charged, I didn't even know what to do with myself. You know what I mean? And, you know, my second series was so much fun that it was so different. And my third series is so different from both of them that it's like, you know, so I think that you just have to find your groove. And if you go in, and because you have so many projects going on, if you move over into one of those other projects, when you feel yourself getting into that slip, you know what I mean? You feel that slope coming up. I'm making music over here. Maybe I can write a song that will draw me away from that particular slope that I keep catching myself on, or that I'm afraid of. You know, I'm excited to see. I'm looking at the Kickstarter now. I'm really excited to see, you know, what you do with it, because you have a particular cover that I find very intriguing. It's this cover with this dude with like a snake wrapped around him.
Yeah, that's the Willie Roberts cover.
I saw that as well. That's a good piece.
It's nice.
You know, it's very intriguing because it's not something you see all the time. And it almost attributes back to homages other books that have come before it. And what's fun with you is the fact that you can joke and say whatever you want, because you're just coming into this industry, and some of these cover styles have been done. You know, that particular form of imagery has not been done that I'm aware of, with the exception of the chick at the bottom and the big body up top. That's been used a couple times, but not enough to where anybody's, I mean, I've been in this industry a really long time. It's not like anybody's going to come out and go, hey, look, we saw that before. You know what I mean? But it's really interesting with the snake. I think the snake sets it off. I think the art's great. But I think that particular imagery gives it a Adam and Eve vibe, if you will. Like she took the bite from the apple, and that's very powerful in my opinion, and it will speak to a lot of people. With the comic books, go ahead.
That's the impression that I got as well, because obviously, Morgan, with the inclusion of the devil, his daughter, you're obviously someone that has been brought up, studied theology along those sorts of lines, and that's obviously very incorporated in what you're doing from what I've seen. What was that a primary thing for you to get this particular book up and running? Your background in that sort of stuff? I mean, did you grow up in a family where you went to church every week, or did you, like this is something you studied like university? I mean, obviously you're interested in the theories that go into that sort of stuff. So what triggered you to bring this into a comic book format?
It's so you're exactly right on both counts. So I grew up in the Pentecostal Christian tradition, right in there, 150% all the way. Went to university, studied theology, learnt biblical Hebrew, learnt Greek, did the whole thing. And as I was studying, because I was one of those people that was thinking, if this is true, and this is not just what I believe, but this is objective truth, I want to know everything that I can about it. So I'm all in. I'm not just going to say, yes, I believe this. If I really believe it, so I went all in. As I was, long story short, through my studies, I ended up moving away from the faith, which a lot of people sort of, think, oh, that's really sad and it's a shame. It was the opposite for me. It was like my eyes were opened, a whole new world opened up to me. I absolutely, it was the most freeing thing I've ever done. But one of the best experiences was learning Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, and the way that they construct stories and narratives and myths and those sorts of things. I wrote my first, sort of papers on that sort of stuff, and was so intrigued once I knew the language behind the text. And one of the stories that came out of that was the book of Job. I studied the book of Job, and the devil, or Lucifer, in the book of Job is not the traditional Christian idea of the devil at all. It's more of an adversary, like a lawyer type character. So it's someone that is basically trying to keep things honest. So Job is, loves God and says God's amazing, but he's rich. He's got an incredibly large family. He doesn't want for anything. So the Lucifer character goes to the God character and says, come on, man, the only reason why this dude loves you is because you've given him everything. Take that stuff away and then see if he still loves you. So his whole point is, I'm here to see if this is really honest or if something else is going on. Is this genuine love? And so that's the figure that I really kind of gravitated towards. But there is, as you're probably guessing, there's some catharsis to this process as well. Like so much of what I learned is not really valuable in a lot of areas of, you can't necessarily apply it to different areas, but with writing and comics and that sort of imagery, you can craft a story. And it just means, even if no one really cares or no one looks at it, I've got this back history and this theological whatever background behind the story that informs how the angels work, the whole dichotomy between good and evil, so yeah, that's a long-winded answer to a very short question, but yeah.
No, I don't think so, because I find that myself, I've discussed with Shane and Dustin before, I grew up in a fairly strict Catholic family, mate. I had to go to mass and and even school, Christian brothers colleges and stuff, so religion every morning, mass at school once a week, Sundays and that. And then the one thing that I guess my parents gave to me at the end of it was, like, you're 18 now, you're your own person, what do you want to do? gone. Like me, you know what I mean? Like I had my fill, mate. You know what I mean? But the strange part is throughout my comic book Battle for Bustle, there's still motifs of that imagery and iconology that I remember that seem to come into my work as well, mate. And I don't know whether I mean it a lot of the time. It just seems the right thing to do with that particular point that, you know what I mean, I'm trying to get across with the artwork or the writing and stuff. I think from what I'm seeing of your work, man, I think the next thing I was going to say, but you already answered the question, was, is it cathartic for you, mate? Because there's certain things that no one really understands the questions you've asked yourself, like yourself. You can talk for many, many hours, you know, about it, and people still won't understand, you know, the gravity of that particular, you know, portion of your life. But the one thing that I like what you're doing, and it's similar to what Dustin's doing, it's similar to what I'm doing, is, you know, my writing comes from every one of my characters in Battle for Bustle is based on someone that I know, and it's based on someone, whether I've liked that individual, whether that individual is me, whether that individual is a family member. I've tried incorporating those familiarities into Battle for Bustle. Are you doing that with your characters as well? You know, when you were saying you're concerned sometimes you're creating a character that's too much like the next or the last character. Are you taking this character and going, well, you know, my granddad, you know, used to have these little idiosyncrasies and he had this about him, so I will add that to that character? Or do you just, you know, have a piece of paper in front of you and you say, oh, I want him to be, you know, long haired, I want him, you know, like in a jacket, and I want him to like a beer at the end of every page? Like, you know, your writing process interests me, man, because what you're talking about is obviously not just someone sitting down at a computer and punching out numbers, mate. You know what I mean? Like, you're obviously spending a lot of time and thought and emotional and love in what you're doing. So while I've got you right here, is like, who is Daisy based on? Who is your version of Lucifer based on? Like, I know we've spoken about the theological side of things, and we know where that particular individual is and who he is in, you know, culture.
Yeah.
But your take, who is that person? Is it a darker side of you? Is it, you know, like, is it someone you've met? Like, does that make any sense to you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, I don't tend to agonize too much on this stuff at the start. I tend to just start writing and then more reflectively go back and think, oh, that's who that person is. That's why I've done it that way. But definitely the Lucifer character is a type, and I think it's one of those, part of it is who you would like to be. Part of it, in terms of me, he's the sort of character, and there's another character in one of my other books that'll be coming out later, who is a similar sort of thing, where he just says whatever he wants to say. There are no social niceties. There are nothing holding him back. It doesn't matter if the whole universe is hinging on him doing his thing a certain way. If he's decided that's it, and I don't care about the consequences. And there's that part of me, because, you know, I come from fairly standard, very, very white English stock, you know, and it's the polite. I'll be far more polite in front of, to my shame, far more polite in front of strangers than I will my family if I'm, you know, irritated about something or whatever, because of this societal sort of, you know. And what really attracts me about the Lucifer character and other characters I've written is they just do not care about that at all, and that doesn't even register for them that would be an issue. They just do their thing, and I love the way it's almost like the bow of one of those ice ships that just cuts through the ice. They do their thing, and the world, rearranges itself to let them through.
Right.
And there's something magnetic about that, because that is not what I'm like at all, and that is not like. But it's I'm attracted to that kind of quality.
Right. It's like when you were a kid,
Cool.
we all had amazing imaginations. Every creative individual in this world has had a great imagination, I like to think. So like, and that's where that even as an adult, it's that area that forms these incredible like concepts in your head that the world doesn't get to see, but this is what I would imagine my character to be like in this world that I've created. This is who I want to be in it. I didn't have the opportunity to write that. That's not what I got to do. And I'm not saying I wanted to do that, but a lot of people get to do that. That's something that they enjoy doing. I think that's a very interesting take on things, because it's like you let your psyche out, if that makes any sense. You let that person out that you keep hidden and tied up, and it's like that twin that you keep in the attic, that nobody knows about. Mom and dad take food up to. You know what I mean? I'm with you on that. But there's a lot to that. There's a lot to that person that we don't allow people to see. He or she is up there, and they have this own mentality of their own. And as we write, I noticed that you had this down at the bottom, an add-on you had called Rust Chronicles Anthologies, 196 pages, digital PDF. I'm assuming it's like a novel. And to me, that says a lot for your ability to want to write and want to get your stories told if you're putting out PDFs like that. So that being said, we understand you a little bit better now, Mr. Quaid. Lee, Shane, and myself, and probably several people that are watching understand you a little bit better, as it's like you want that person to get out. You made a comment earlier that said you gravitate toward a certain individual, and that's a very powerful emotion from a writer, because you're like, that's my superhero. You know what I'm saying? Regardless if he has powers, she has powers, or anything like, that's my hero. That's who I wanted to be in life that I'm not. And I think comic books and novels in general, they give people it's a media that gives people the ability to live that character. Video games, you name it, gives you the ability to live that character that you would want to live your life as. That's not to say that you don't appreciate your life and people should appreciate their lives, but it's an extension of yourself as a person. You get to let that twin out of the attic and go kill the neighbor's cat or the dog or the kid down the street that bullied you. You know what I mean? He gets to come out for a little bit, and then you put his ass back up there because he can't stay out for too long, because he'll mess some shit up and you just don't want it. Eventually somebody's going to fall.
And it's the poor brother that's got to clean it up. Like,
absolutely. Absolutely. So it's very interesting to be able to let that individual out and write a story. I can assure you that I never once in my life thought I would write the things that I write currently. Any of my books, never once. I didn't read books like that. I wasn't interested in stories like that, and now it's just like, I can't imagine not. It's like, as you get older, food is an example. Food's a great example in this world right now with foodies and everything else, and food being accessible to a lot of people. And it's a shame that it's not accessible to everyone. But to those that have the ability to get certain foods and stuff, it's a talent. It's like a palate swap. You know what I'm saying? As a kid, you didn't like this, and this. But when you get older, you're like, oh man, that's really, really good. I just didn't enjoy it as a kid. I still don't drink coffee. I find it's an acquired taste that I never acquired. You know what I'm saying? I never acquired that one. But beer will throw down. I'm told that's an acquired taste. So I understand where you're at with these things, but I find it very prevalent in the words that people say when we do these shows. Like the small details. You talked about the iceberg, in the ship pushing through an iceberg. that shows a lot about what you want to be as a person. It shows where you want your characters to exist at. You know, you want them to be able to push through these shitty situations they get put in because it's powerful. That's what your book is. You know, whether we realize what we're writing or not when we're writing it, because it's the forest for the trees, right? So you get there and you're like, man, I really want to build this character that can handle any type of thing that comes before them. The world is their playground. And that's what writing is. We get to bring out this amazing, like I said, shitty twin brother or sister that comes down and lets that out. And that's your person. That's your ship, dude. That's your ship moving through this ice, pushing all this stuff out of the way, adversity. I think the book is really cool looking. I think it's got a very Mike Mignola look to it, almost like that's what I get from it. I don't know if you're a fan, Mr. Quaid, but no, I cannot stand coffee. Like, coffee's the worst thing ever. Tastes like
I've drunk one coffee in my entire life, and it was a latte, and I had a tremendous headache for about 3 hours afterwards. Everyone around me was patting me on the shoulders. Are you all right? You would have thought I don't know, taken heroin to the arm or something. It was,
I'm just like, it smells like shit, tastes like shit, looks like shit. I don't
Well,
want
what about the poor buggers that are out paying like $35 a cup for that African cat poo coffee, man? Like, get out of here. You know, like, come on. Hey, you must try this. It's so delicate. Like, mate.
Yeah, that's like saying
away from me.
That's like saying you want to go out and pull the corn kernels out of the chook shit and eat that. So we're not doing any of that. But what there, like you said, there's a lot to be said about the words you use and the expressions you use when you talk about your stuff. You know what I mean? And I do it too, and Lee does it as well. You know, you get into the zone because you're proud of your product. It's obviously, you know, there. You're proud of what you've created. And like I said, if you're not a Mignola fan, check him out. I think you'll enjoy his work. He created Hellboy. He's an awesome, talented guy. But that's what I get. I get a very close relation to that art style with the book. I find that there's a, you know, there's a lot to be said. There's a lot to be said about the style. There's a lot to be said about the character you've created, what she looks like, you know, the little nuances. She's got red hair. I mean, it's Lucifer's daughter. You know, she's gonna be Fury Redhead. You get it. You know, there are just nuances. It's just like music. You know what I mean? You pluck certain chords. Certain chords resonate with different people. You know what I'm saying? It's a very, you know, sound is very powerful when it comes to people and stuff. And I think that you've hit the nail on the head with what you wanted. It looks like to me. It looks like you've created this world where, you know, you've got your post-apocalyptic stuff. You've shown previews enough for people to see the type of thing you're trying to give them. I don't foresee if we pick up this book that it'll be any different than what we expect from you, you know, and what you've described. Because there are plenty of things out there. Like, I know for a fact Greed is going to make people fucking flip because it looks very different than, you know, you get this sweet kid and this little monster under the bed on the cover. You know what I mean? So there's a lot to be said about things like that, but I don't think that you do that. It looks to me like everything is right there. You know, you're being very honest with the reader, and that's very welcoming. You know, you're literally like, this is what I've got. You know, here's the Kickstarter. You know, the story's fun. This is what I think about it. This is my hero. You know, and that's what it looks like. It looks like you've given people your hero, because it looks like I hate the term strong female protagonist, because people throw it around like it's fucking change anymore to get attention. But that's what I get from it. I get that it looks like a very powerful female lead character, and that's also very interesting. You know, and it vibes with a lot of people.
Yeah, well, I like it. So the funniest, this is going to sound really weird, and apologies up front if I offend everyone, but one of the funniest things to me is a super, 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 super old person with a filthy mouth. There is nothing funnier to me than an old grandma that you expect to be just so polite and kind, and just this stream of filth coming out of the mouth. I mean, not in reality. In reality, that's kind of like, oh, you know, let's just. But I love the idea of something not being what it looks like on the surface, and I like the idea of someone who is, you know, a 16-year-old girl, stuck in the middle of an apocalyptic sort of situation on her own, no other support. Not only that, she's effectively in the first issue being hunted. So there's a precarious sort of situation there, and she doesn't know that she has anything other than that sort of makeshift spear. But I love that, because that then she can show you that she's something different to what you assumed she was, or what you think. You know, it's a pretty simple mechanism, but I really like that. And I like, on the flip side, a powerful kind of angelic Lucifer kind of figure who is just a deadbeat that doesn't want to do his job and doesn't want to, just leaves all that stuff behind. So you've kind of got the two opposites. You know, I like that idea. Yeah.
It seems like a lot of fun, man. I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but it seems like a lot of fun. I think the guys and girls that watch, and gals and whatever, and kids, and most of the, I've learned that there are kids that watch the show, so I have to behave. But there are, you know, there are a lot of fans that I think will enjoy it. You know what I mean? It's Enmity on Kickstarter. Looks really good. There's a lot of cool stuff on it. The video looks great. You know,
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it definitely looks solid, man. I think that it's something you can be proud of for a guy that's talking about he hasn't been doing it very long. So I think it's definitely a solid outing, in my opinion. And I'm intrigued by the Rust thing. So that's got me more than, you know. And I'm not saying that the comic doesn't intrigue me, but I'm a big reader too. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, that looks pretty cool. I might have to reach out about that, because that's looking like a lot of fun to me. So what started this? What drew you to do a comic book, man? Like,
well, so it's interesting you talk about Rust. So that was that's, you know how everyone's got a project that they've been working on for 20 years, 30 years, whatever it might be. That's my 15-year project. Yeah. Yeah, that's the one I care about more than anything else. That's the world I've envisioned more than anything else.
For sure.
I've got, so that Rust Chronicles book is a book of short stories with a lot of artwork interspersed. It has an album with it, and each track in the album lines up with an individual story. So you listen to that music while you're, you know, reading that short story. That's like an introduction to this world of dreams. The central premise is there's a world of dreams, and at the center of this kind of world that's in flux and it's constantly changing, there's this city that they call Rust that always seems to be there, and it's the only permanent thing kind of in this place, and people periodically dream themselves in there and all this sort of stuff. So there's 4 novels that are complete, but really need to be edited by someone that can see my own spelling mistakes, because I can't. There's 4 novels. There's a comic that I'm going to be launching on Kickstarter after this one. There's another comic after that. There's a graphic novel and a couple of short comics as well. So they're all done. They're ready to go, but I've been just sort of waiting and trying to work out how this whole thing works.
So you've been busy, Morgan.
Yeah.
Very
well, I've
busy.
been writing and trying to figure this thing out, but in answer to your question, they were written first. I had no idea about the comics industry. I had no real interest when I was a kid in comics. You know, the kind of.
What was your first comic book?
I think
that triggered this interest to step into the world of comics, mate.
So I think the story, this is the story I'm telling anyway, because I can't remember the real story, but I think this is what happened. I was walking in Brisbane City, walked past ComX, etc., which is one of the comic shop. Walked in, and I don't know why, walked in and saw a bunch of image titles. And I think Chew was one of the first ones that I picked up. And my God, just fell in love immediately with the art style. But the thing that struck me was I thought it was just superheroes. And there's this small world of stuff that's been going on for years that I didn't know about. And if I had have known, I wouldn't have any money because I would have spent it all on this stuff. So that's the first thing I did, was spend a ton of money. And I mean, you can see them, you know, behind me, and just started buying more and reading more. And that was where it started. And I thought, my God, I've got to do this. This is It's one step away from cinema for me. This kind of thing.
Absolutely, mate. Well, you think about it, but Dustin, you think about storyboards, man. I was just going to say that Ridley Scott, renowned for doing his own storyboards. The man's got literally comic books of every one of his movies. He sits there and draws them out for a month before he shoots. I mean, they all do it. All the God.
As you look at these things, as you look like going into a book like Chew, absolutely. So going into a book like Chew, right? Chew had that indie it factor. It was different. You know what I'm saying? It was, holy cow, he can eat somebody and remember like their memory type of deal. So then you fast forward to iZombie, right? You know, and that's an argument that people will have to the end of days until the chooks are hollering in the morning, right? So it's like you got this character that you've created, and people that goes back into, you don't see it in indie as much as you see it in mainstream comic books, but that goes back to the not original idea. You know, instead of Chew, when it came out, smash, right? Smash. It's been going for a while. It's a great book. And then all of a sudden you get this other book that it was like, meh. You know, it was like Chew Light, you know, and, you know,
Chew no sugar.
Right. Like Diet Chew, you know what I mean? Like 1-800-CHEW for less. I got you. And it's just not, it's not great when it happens like that. But that's how you know you've got an incredible idea on your hands, right? Everybody's out to copy what you've done. You know, and looking at things like that, there were a couple books that I think really turned the market for indie comic books and publishers. You know, if you look back at what's going on, Dave?
Hey, Dave.
If you go back and you look at like Dark Horse Comics, you know, Dark Horse still to this day puts out incredible content. You know, incredible content, and you know, and Image, and you go and you look at these guys and you're like, man, you know, and Valiant, you know, stuff like that. And there's a lot of really cool indie publishers in the world, but they don't get the presence that they should get. You know, now you've got guys coming up like Aftershock and Scout, and well, Aftershock's been around a while, but there's a bunch of really cool companies out there, and they put out really, really good content. And if you notice, all the really, really good content is where we get really, really good films from. You know, speaking of being really close to cinema, you know, oh my God, The Walking Dead. I mean, I wasn't even a fan, right? Kirkman's a great writer. I'm not trying to bash the guy. I'm not a fan. You know what I mean? I've read every zombie flick or read every zombie book and seen every zombie flick that has been done because my wife's a huge fan. You know what I mean? And I'm okay with it. But I think the scariest part of like all that stuff is the human beings, and that's why we're you know, The Walking Dead. You know what I'm saying? Kirkman put it together like 2 + 2, and everybody ate it up. You know, ate it up so fast. That's one of the few indie books that popped off at $1,000 for issue number 1. You know what I mean? It's like you're holding a piece of cinema history when you get your hands on The Walking Dead number 1 now. You know, it used to be before the movie or before the show came out, it was dollar bin books. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden the show pops off and it's like, holy cow! Look at oh my gosh, Game of Thrones, right? Game of Thrones was a novel first. You know, the Fire and Ice. You know, sort of a Song of Fire and Ice. If I'm not
That's the one. Yep.
You know, and incredible, right? Incredible couple books. Then dude disappears for 10 fucking years. Excuse me. So he disappears, right? Disappears, comes back and writes a whole new cast of characters, and you're just like, "What? What happened to my people?" You know what I mean? But it's still popped off huge. You know, I think the only example recently of a media like that, like a comic book or a novel that didn't do well, and sadly, was Jupiter's Legacy. I mean,
so I read that got axed by Netflix a couple of days ago. See you later, no more seasons.
Absolutely, and that had an amazing team behind it. You know, when they put the book out, and the book is decent. So
Dustin, it goes to show you though, mate. Like, it really is the luck of the draw, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, and I think essentially, if you're sitting at home thinking that you're on a billion-dollar idea, there's a chance that that's not going to, blossom for you. I think you need to be at home. It's got to be $1 billion idea for yourself.
Absolutely.
Before I think you can push it out into the world. No, well, mate, there's a great comic books are a beautiful thing because they're artwork and words working together. A cinematic feel if done right. The writing, essentially can open pathways to anyone's imaginations and things. I tell people that away from you guys, varying people, that I do a comic book, a soon to be comic books, apparently Shane. And and they look at me and they go, "Oh, you do comic books?" Like, "Oh yeah." And what we were saying before is, you get the whole, "Oh, what do you do? Like Superman, Batman?"
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, not really, but I just don't argue, or even worry. Yeah, man, thumbs up, good stuff, thanks, sort of thing. But
I love the scripted response to it. Like you're already prepared. Me, I'm like, oh my God, you got to check out my book. It's awesome. It's so much fun. It's crazy, and it's not a superhero book,
mate. And seriously, it's funny, but I think like I love the fact, Morgan, that you, much like myself, Battle for Bustle started developing for me when I was 20 and my dad died. And it came from a love of comic books due to him. So the love was passed on. I never really had a choice. He was quite obsessive with comic books, henceforth me. But what you're telling me about Rust and how you started developing it 15 years ago for whatever thing that was that, this is what I want to do. And then you walked into comics, etc., and you found Chew. And that's the path you're now going. I mean, it doesn't, sometimes it just doesn't happen when you're 10. Sometimes it happens when you're 20 or 25. Sometimes, you can make a Game of Thrones, or sometimes you can just make an example of, yes, Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead, but one of my favorite comic book to movie films was a movie with Tom Hanks in it called The Road to Perdition. And
that was
I read those. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I read those comic books many years ago, and I loved the comic books. That was one of my first that I got off the shelf, the series. And then, really strange, 2 years later, here's Tom Hanks and Jude Law and, Daniel Craig suddenly doing The Road to Perdition. And I was like, okay, let's go and look at that. And I thought at the time, that movie, man, awesome. Critics loved it. You look at Rotten Tomatoes and it's got, 97% or whatever it is, but it made half of the money back at, of what it cost, and that's a bloody tragedy, mate. There's so many creators and comic books and stuff that just don't get there. And, but you know what? You just got to keep on trying, mate, and as if you listen to everyone that tells you, what are you doing that for? No, you shouldn't be doing that. Or why don't why don't you grow up? Or, mate, you wouldn't do anything in your life, would you? You wouldn't do anything, because not everyone out there is always going to tell you can't do it, And for a long time, fear stopped me because I listened to those people too much, much like what we've discussed here today. But I reached a point where I was like, you know what? Listening to those people has not got me anywhere either. So perhaps you should find your voice, mate. And the voice started coming through writing, through drawing, through, creativity. Whether it's music, whether it's art, whether it's drawing. I mean, mate, I don't bag anyone's stuff. Sometimes I don't like things, but I keep that opinion to myself because I'm very much of the opinion the individual has a voice and he should be heard.
Right.
So that's why I said earlier is community is unity. I love stories like yours, Morgan, today because I can see your heart's in it, man. If you know, I'm sure I read or possibly talking to Shane at one point where he was telling me you get up at like 5 a.m. in the morning because that's the best time for you to write your scripts before you go to work and that. Like, I mean, mate, that, you know, like that's some dedication there, mate. You know what I mean? Like 5 a.m. in the morning because you believe that this stuff has to get out.
Right
you
on.
know?
Well, they say
Absolutely.
actors are never going to get anywhere, right? You know, if you're not going to hustle, man, there's no point in trying. You know what I mean? I tend to so my wife and I work from home. You know, comics is my life. That's what I do for a living. You know, and she works from home as well. So it's like, you know, she works 9 hours a day, and we've got a 2-year-old. You know, so it's literally like I keep the 2-year-old during the day, you know, and move some books and work with comics and stuff like that. But then I don't write until the boy's in bed. You know what I mean? Then it's like 9 o'clock at night by that time, and you're trying to figure stuff out. And with me, it's I'm really glad like our room in here is soundproof because, you know, I don't have a granny flat I can run out to. You know what I mean? And so it's like I'm blaring, you know, really loud music in here and stuff because that's the vibe. You know, that's what I need. You know, it's because it's so emotional that I'll mess myself up. You know what I mean? Like, and I'll mess myself up and it'll become a bender. You know, like it'll be a bad bender too. Like there'll be bottles of Jack and all kinds of other shenanigans, and I won't be right, you know, for the rest of the night. So I have to get myself in a headspace, you know, because the listener is very personal to me. It's very personal, and everything that I put into that book is personal. So I think that it's interesting how we all have different ways of doing things, and we find our own zone, you know. But the hustle is there regardless. You know, you have to have the hustle. You know, if you're not willing to put in the time, don't come and play. You know, because it's going to take time. It's going to take money. You know, and like I just mentioned, comics not being cheap. You know, and a lot of people have no idea. $2,000 Kickstarter does not pay for my book. I have news for you. It's not going to happen. That doesn't do it. You know, so, and for anybody that is in this industry and understands, if you're putting out a 24-page book, full color book, $2,000 ain't doing it. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's your buddy doing it or somebody else. That still ain't cutting it. You know, so all these things have to be taken into account. And I think it's interesting when people go, hey, look, I get up at 5 a.m. and I just, man, I so much respect for the hustle, you know, to work a regular job and still do that. You know what I mean? It goes to show the determination and the perseverance of what you've got going on.
Absolutely.
You know, same thing with Lee. Look at, oh my God, the amount of years that have been put into Battle for Bustle. You know what I mean? I can't even begin to, like, my buddy Jim has been doing indie books for 2 years now, and he's got like 17 books out off of 17 successful Kickstarters in 2 years with, oh my God, 100 and something variants, 200, probably more, a lot more than that, I'm sure. A lot more than 100 variants. But it's just, when you look at things and you sit down and you're like, man, because we all have those days, right, where it's rough and you're just like, oh, a lot of work coming today. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you look at what you've done and you look what you've accomplished, what you've created, you know, and the bridges you've formed. Like Lee was talking about, you know, unity and stuff, and the people that you've met and the vibe that's created with all these people. You know, I think that it needs to be understood that you've made it. You know, I heard Tom Hutchinson say it one time. He said it one time, and I'll never forget it. And I quote him on it all the time. Once you've published it, you've done it. You know, the hustle is there. No one can take that away from you. Now you just have to build it and cultivate your hustle. You know, make it work for you. You know, and that's, I think that therein lies the actual hustle. You know, getting the book done, whatever. You know, getting the book out, fine. After that's the real hustle. Do you want to do it for a living? Do you want to show people your stories? You know, and I get that from you. I get the vibe that it's there, the drive, and that's really cool, man. Because not everybody's got it. It's like a fire, man, that you can. You know, you come in and you're like, if you don't feel it, you don't feel it. You know what I mean? But then you walk into a room with dudes that are all like amped up. It's like going to the Super Bowl, right? You're all ready to go. You know, there's something to talk about your product. Oh man, I'm going on the show tonight. Well, push my book. People are gonna like it. You know, and it's just like, there it is, man. And you know, it's the same thing with, you know, a simple thing like a smile, right? It's as simple as that. Somebody says something polite about your book, and it's not even on purpose. You can't even stop it. You know what I mean? It's like, there it is, and it's such a powerful feeling. And I think it's there, man. I think the book has it. I think that you'll get it. I think that it's awesome. I love the Rust stuff. I'm going to end up contacting you about that because I'm really excited about it for some reason. I'm really, really excited about it. You haven't talked about it a lot, but I'm really excited about it because I love the imagery you've got on that. Like I said, I'm a big reader. I read as often as I possibly can because if I wasn't reading, Ryan's World would probably kill me during the day with my 2-year-old. You know what I mean? So it just, kids shows, man. Once you've seen them one time, you've seen every episode a million. You know, so it's like, I definitely try to, you know, get a little reading in there, you know, while he's chilling on the couch watching, you know, whatever that crazy dude is doing on his TV show. But there's a lot to be said about the quality, you know, and if you put out the quality, it speaks for itself, just like anything else, right? You got the hustle, you got the brand, you've created yourself, and that's what you're selling. You're selling yourself, Mr. Quaid, and you've sold me. So I'm excited about it.
Thanks.
You sold me too, buddy.
Cheers. Well, I've got you. Battle for Bustle is not quite here yet, but they're on their way. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them because I haven't seen them yet. So that's going to be pretty cool.
Look here.
I greatly appreciate that, mate. Yeah, I got them. I shipped them off to you on Monday. So, God, it goes to show you that Australia Post are fantastic, isn't it? You know, we're only 1,500 kilometres away, and you haven't even got it like 6 days later. You know, like I could have just bloody driven there and given it to you.
I'm dealing with Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK right now for books going out, you know, and it's just like, where is the stuff at? You know what I mean? You call the post office and they're like, yeah, you got a tracking number. Yeah, I got a tracking number. Well, it only works till it gets to that country. And you're like, how does that work? What do you mean it only works till it gets there? I needed to go places once it gets there. You know, holding it in customs for months at a time. You know, I'm like trying to ship like small animals and stuff to different countries. No, I'm just trying to send some paper. Let the paper go through. You know? I did have a conversation, and it's funny. They open those packages and they go through it, you know, and I guess not all the time, but a lot of times they do, especially with COVID and stuff, I guess. But like we have Nazis in the listener, you know, and that's our main protagonist in the first couple issues, you know, or antagonist, sorry, main antagonist in the first couple issues. And it's like, if they see that, like they see like Nazi, like in Germany, they see like Nazi symbols on, you know, characters on a cover. Like ours are zombies. They're already dead on the cover because it's a tribute to Turok. It's an homage to the Turok cover. But, you know, you see that and they're immediately like, hey, we need to talk about this. And I'm like, bro, I live a real long way away. You know, I mean, I can't come pick them up. You know what I'm saying? Don't send them back. Just send them to the dude that paid for them. You know what I mean? Let him come get them. I promise he's not a Nazi. Just let him pick them up. You know? But, you know, it's interesting, you know, and I think that the Post sucks. So, and I think that's universal. I don't think that's one country. I think that's every country. You know, I mean, and then you want to charge, like for us, it's like $100 US to send like a 30-pound package to y'all right now. And it's ridiculous amount of money, you know. So I'm going to eventually figure out how to get Shane to be able to print my books over there, and we'll even print them under his stuff, I'm okay
ComX
with that.
Studios.
Oh wow.
I'm okay with that.
Nice.
100%. As long as you can print them over there, dude. There's nothing wrong with supporting each other. You know what I'm saying? So
No.
if I can bring some notice to what you've got going on over there too, I'm 100% for it. So if you've got, let's say you've got five people under your umbrella right now, add me. I'll be your 6th, and we'll print my books over there too, and it'll be a good time.
Nice.
Just let me know what you got going on, man.
Community is unity. Seriously, this is no. Well, when we were talking, like Morgan, just to let you in, like Dustin and Shane and I talk a bit, and when this, cross country ComX thing popped up, it was a case of, we'd done that calendar, been involved in the calendar with Shane, and we all met like this, and mutual appreciation for each other's work and varying things, and liked each other. We got talking, and the one thing that we all took from it is that, mate, there's a lot of us out there. We shouldn't just be a little dot on the map. You know what I mean? Like, whether you are in Tennessee, or whether you're in far north Queensland, or whether you're in southeast Queensland, Western Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand, who cares where you are? You got to have your little, I'd like people to be able to be inspired by you, Morgan, and your story today. I want people to be inspired by the work that Shane's done to put everything together and what he's doing, because the joke is that I have with Shane is that we're all like little books, mate, out there floating. And I call him Old Man Library, because he's like the library that's starting to bring all these books together on the shelves, man. And he's doing it, started for the same reason we did, love.
Right
And if Rob Lyle and I were talking the other day about, one of my best mates sent me pictures of his, 7-8-year-old daughter drawing Battle for Bustle characters, and brought me to tears, man. And that's
awesome.
and that sort of, and he's had the same experience. So, like, if you can reach anyone that's sitting in there in a dark, sometimes you're in a dark place, and the only little bit of light you've got is what you are creating in front of you. And there's no right or wrongs what you create. It's just the admiration is to keep pushing forward, because as the old quote says, the only way through it is to get through it. And if that is what you need, and I hear stories too, like Hayden Spurrell was telling us the other day, Shane, when he was on, when he went to look, he had no idea of at the community of comics that were out there. So he reached out to an artist that he met through the internet by whatever channel necessary that was in Argentina, and they have a wonderful working relationship now. There's just everyone come, bring it forth, mate. Like comics, love, community, man. Look, I just love this shit, really, because my dad introduced it to me. I'm in far north Queensland. I have no one to speak to. The comic guys, man, are more interested in their little wobbly pop heads and, caps and pillows and stuff, than they are comic books. Hey, man, if you got, you go and buy, oh, can I collect? I've got issue 1 and 2, mate. I've got a monthly order. Where's issue 3? Oh, I don't know, but I've got issue 5 for you. Oh, get out of here. It's cool, but Morgan, you're awesome, man. I'm going to definitely look into Rust and be speaking to you more, mate. So it's great to meet you in person today. So you've inspired me, mate, to continue on. I love these sorts of stories. The Listener is a great comic book. Do yourself a favor, get it. Talk to Dustin, because that is awesome, man. That book, and Dustin's shown me greed. Excellent. And the other thing is too, Morgan, if I am correct, Dustin's a world builder.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm a world builder, in it for the long haul, not the short, as you call it, Dustin, the short game. We like the long game.
We like the long game.
I suspect you are as well, Morgan. Is that correct? That's what all these stories are all tied into your world, and you're just trying to get them out there.
That's it. Yeah.
That's exciting. That's really exciting, because the long game to me, if you have we'll be kind and we'll call it cojones. If you have the cojones to push a series, because people are, in this day and age, we like instant gratification. You know what I'm saying? We like it. We like the right now. Give me what I want right this second. And a lot of people write to that nowadays. You know what I'm saying? There's no more buildup. It's the money shot as soon as you start. And that's, I think it's almost a damning quality, in my opinion, because is you create a world, you want people to relate to your characters. You want them to feel, they're alive. And I said something about it on Facebook earlier. That's my favorite part about writing comic books, creating these characters and bringing them to life in a way that, like, none of my characters are safe in any of my books. Let me put that out there real quick. So when I kill a character off, I was only on book 2, and I had people blowing up my inbox. You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, but death is not finite in my books. You know what I mean? So it's an interesting quality to be able to do that, but to elicit a response from people, I think that's the most powerful part about it. Hey, look, you killed my favorite character. Don't worry about it. You know what I'm saying? It's all good. Don't hate me yet. But that's the interesting part about it. You succeeded in getting their attention, and that's the world builder, because now we're building characters that people give a shit about and they feel, versus, I love Spider-Man. I've been a fan since I was a kid, a young kid, but I haven't given a shit about what's going on in Peter Parker's life since probably 1995. It's been a real long time. And that's not to say that I don't support the book or buy the book, but you come to a point where things change. The character changes, the stories change, the writing staff changes. That's what's most powerful about an indie writing staff is we have control. We're continuing our stories. These are our characters, and no one can take them from you or change them unless you give them the power to do so. And with characters, oh my God, there's a Battle for Brussels, so easy to use. It's almost as easy for me to use as my own book. So Battle for Brussels, you literally have numbers on these characters, like not given names. You have numbers, like almost like a fucking barcode, on their wrist. You know what I'm saying? And it's so powerful, man. Look, there's a way to pull someone in like that, to show them, hey, look, this is society, whether we like to look at it or not, or we like to understand it. This is society. This is what we've created. And if you show people these things and these nuances, they may not even like all the subliminal message. They may not even like all the subliminal message. But if you give it to them in a way that tastes good to their palate, they'll come back for the next bite, for the next portion, for the next sitting, And I think that's what we shoot for. We shoot to show people how enticing our meals can be when you sit at the table. And it's a big table, man. Like Lee said, there's no reason to push people out. There's a big table, and creating worlds that people can come back to for another sitting is super prevalent in this industry, especially if you want to stick around. You get all kinds of people that they and it's not demeaning anyone, just being honest. If you put out a book once a year, chances are you're going to have to fight to come back and get people to read your book because you're not relevant any longer. A year's a long time. Same thing with 6 months. If it takes you 6 months to put out a book and it's an indie title and you don't have people that are paying attention to what you've got going on, it becomes hard to keep the attention. You know what I mean? So building worlds is very relevant you know, and when you do, you know, you see a lot of these, look what happened last issue type of things. You know what I'm saying? Look what happened last episode. Recaps. You know, all those things are super useful in world building. But if you put it out at a constant rate, you don't have to do that because people are prepared. They understand what they're doing. They get the story. They're in it. You know, hey, Morgan, when's the next issue coming out? You know, I really liked what you did with that. You know, you leave with a cliffhanger. Man, look, are we going out for dessert? You know what I mean? Because that cliffhanger is banging. You know, I need to know what's happening. And I didn't understand that when I first came out. I did it on accident. Like the things I was doing were coming natural. And ESK was the first person to talk to me about it. He was like, you're doing it naturally. Now you even realize you're doing it. You know, and it was such a compliment because the page turn was something that he just talked to us about on the show. And the page turn was something that I was putting in and had no idea that I was using it. You know what I mean? The last page, when I talk about cliffhangers, the last page of the listener was not even in it until 2 weeks prior to print. And it was like, holy shit. Kyle reached out and he was like, hey, look, we're short a page. And I was like, do what? He was like, yeah, we're short a page. We got to do something. So I called Eric and I was like, hey, put this page together. And he was like, I don't know. Everybody's like, I don't know. But it's the most popular page in my book, you know, and that's that page turn is so powerful. You know, if you're ready for it, it can make such an impact on people. And with the world building, I think that we need that. I think that we need these things to draw people into it. And I'm drawn in, like I said already, but you know, when you go to sit at the table, like I'm terrible with imposter syndrome. Everybody laughs at me about it all the time, but I'm awful with it. And I had a guy tell me over the weekend, we were doing the show in Orlando or Tampa. He was like, embrace the imposter syndrome. And I was like, meh, I don't know. But it's a very humbling experience, you know, to sit with people and have them appreciate the work you're putting out, as well as people that are coming in that you've looked at, you know, your peers that are above you, you know. It has to do with that whole, can you sit at the table type of thing? And bro, you've done it. You're there. You're at the table. Be at the table. You know, appreciate the table. You know, sit there. Hey, talk to everybody at it. Gain what you can get from everybody at it. Because most people are cool as shit and they're going to be honest with you. You know, use the table, man. The table's there. And it took me a while to realize I was allowed to sit there. You know what I mean? So understand that you've made a place with this book. I think it's exciting. I think that you're going to get plenty of traction with it. And if there's anything we can do to help, I'm sure all three of us will help you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Thanks, guys.
That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Very humbling, but yeah, really appreciate it. Yeah, and just I suppose from my perspective, you know, there's that fear that there's too much stuff out there already. There's too much on Netflix. It's all the same. It's all. But then I think about myself. I'm always looking for new things to read. I never get full of. I always want more. I always want. It's never enough. So why wouldn't that be the same for, you know, indie creators as well? There's
absolutely. You know, that becomes that's the imposter syndrome. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. It's an everyday struggle to realize that you have value in this industry. And you know, when we went from selling books to creating books, you know, I used to tell people it's a large ocean of talent. Even when I had a brick and mortar store, it's a large ocean of talent. And, you know, but when you jump into that ocean, you either got to swim faster, you got to get bigger, or you got to get some armor on you to last in this ocean of talent. You know, you got to thicken that skin up just a little bit because, man, look, as big as the table is, not everybody's solid at it. So it's like, hey, look, I got to come in. I got to show people. I got to be recognized, you know, or be the brightest fish. You don't even have to be the toughest or the most violent or anything like that. Just be the brightest fish you can be, man. Somebody's going to look at the colors and be like, oh, that's a really pretty fish. You know, I need to pay attention to that fish in this massive ocean of talent, you know. And that's what I was talking about with the originality. You know, bring your originality. You know, don't stoop to like sink to that low that a lot of people do where they're like, I got to use this idea that somebody came out with. Don't use that. Do your stuff, your ideas, and it's going to stand up and it's going to speak for itself. because that's what sold me, the originality of the story. Man, look, there's a million great artists in the world. I love all their talent. That's the ocean of talent. It's right there. There's a million great writers in the world too. There's a million people that are trying to step in those same shoes that you're walking in. But all you got to do is, stick to what's tried and true to you, man. You know what?
Be yourself.
Listen to the man.
Because there's no one else out there like you, mate. And there's no one else out there like any of us. And you know what? The one thing I've learned in my minimal time here is doing this stuff is there's a lot of egos at that table. And, ego, the old saying is everyone's got one.
That's right.
And as you grow, you will find that you will have the opportunity to perhaps get a bigger ego. But the trick is to keep it level, because there are a lot of people, man, that regardless of wherever you are and what I've seen, are doing amazing things that are so down to earth, that want to help and will sit and talk with you for hours. And then you get these other buffheads that have one little, oh yeah, this is me, and I'm off and running by myself, and I'm, the duck's nuts, and you know what? In 6 months, they're puttering out because people don't get, hey man, what, you don't come on like a cannonball, man, on one success. That's the long game. And mate, I'm going to sit here, and in 3 years' time, Bustle's going to be into its second volume. Marathon's going to be finished, and that's the prehistory of Bustle. And I'm going to be on to something else. And I've already got ideas from where other things. I'm talking to different people. Like I'm talking to people that I've admired from afar for years, man, just by simply saying, typing, hello, how you doing? Lucky enough to get them back. Like, look, Rob laughs. I love Dave Dye's artwork, man. He's a great dude. I love his artwork. And he's doing a drawing of one of my characters, Hanson, which blew my mind. Another guy, Bo Jardine. I love his artwork. He's a black and white, loves black and white the same as I do. I've been talking to him, picking up bits and pieces from that on an art side. But if you can only do that by staying humble and staying true to the process of learning. You never stop learning. I thought I had the whole lettering thing reasonably down pat. And then, on the second episode, there's Kay comes out. And man, I was sitting there going like, God damn it, issue 4 going to the printers next week. No, it's not. Like the whole language of lettering in a comic book, man.
He's a monster. He letters all my books. He's an absolute monster. I mean, mega talented guy. And that goes hand in hand with that, right, Lee?
You can reach out to him, can't you, Dustin? You can type SK a message and say, buddy, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And he'll give you his, if it doesn't work or it does work. He's not doing it for like anything other than the appreciation, hence the community, man. It's a beautiful thing. Morgan, man, reach out to these people, brother. You got nothing to be like scared of with your property, man. Like
everybody we know is really cool though. Like if you like I tend to trim those that aren't, you know what I mean? So if there's somebody around us, they're cool people. It becomes this like understanding that I could reach out to any of these cats at any hour. You know what I mean? And not that they're going to get back to me right that second.
And I can tell you sometimes he does, Morgan. You'll be seeing me out like a light. Ding, ding, ding.
That's because I'm sending you something that I'm probably working on at the time. But it's like, we work with people all over the world, and that's that unity part of it, though, because we're literally, oh my God, like you're working with these dudes that are just like you, just on the other side of the planet. You know what I mean? They have a, like to you guys, I have an accent. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because that's the only difference. That it literally the only difference. And comic books are bridging a gap that has existed forever in this world. You know what I mean? I don't like you because you live over there. Well, why? Well, because you live over there. What? That makes zero sense to me. So in this industry, we can assist one another in bridging those gaps of people and those gaps of land. I had a buddy that hangs out with these guys the other day that was like, you need to become an Australian. You need to just come over here and get your papers and stuff. And I was like, the minute my books start popping off, I may do it. If I can get to the point, like if I can get to the point where everything is gravy and it takes time, I'll do my time. I'm not in a hurry. But if it all comes down to it, after my mom and dad, all that, when it's just us, I have no problem. I as long as you guys don't let those bear things get me that Jim was talking about. I don't.
Can I just tell you something, Dustin? They don't exist, mate. No, mate. The closest thing you'll get to a drop bear is a koala bear, and he'll probably fall out of the gum tree on top of you because he's asleep, mate. Like there's no drop bears that jump out at you and shred you to pieces. That makes me laugh, the drop bear thing. I'd love to know actually where that came from, man. I'm going to Google that after we go our other ways. Where did drop bear originate? Probably some B-grade Australian movie made back in the day, man. The C-grade.
The Howling Marsupials. I don't know if you remember that one, but The Howling did the. If you're a fan of the old werewolf movies, The Howling did I think it was 3. It was called Marsupials, and they literally had mixed like a kangaroo werebreed, with werewolves. And, like,
no way.
They were holding babies in like pouches on their stomachs and stuff. Yeah, it was really, really grimy. But yeah, not great. And I love snakes and stuff. I'm good for all that, except for your browns. I'm not a fan of that. Eastern brown is not something I want anything to do with. Yeah, so, other than that, you guys have got some cool animals. Lots of fun stuff to see. And then wombats, man. Y'all have got wombats. I'm super jealous.
Yeah, they're cool.
They look like the cool, like this. Like Mike Crome has a pair of them at his mom's house, and they're like the sweetest animals that you like playing with his daughter and stuff, and just like dogs. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I have the closest thing to wombats I have prairie dogs. My daughter has 2 of them that hang out with us, actually live in the house. But I don't have any giant fucking fuzzy things that would be cool to hang out with other than my dog. So, yeah, drop bears are not real. I knew that at the time. Jim just kept trying to convince me they were, and you helped him. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate your time.
What can I say? It's like, I'm always here to help, Dustin.
Yeah, it's super helpful. Next time you're drunk, I'm going to tell you a story all about how a crazy American creature that lives in North America that may try to eat you if you ever come visit. You know what I mean? Like a fucking crocodile, because we have those, but you guys have them.
Let's tell you what, Dustin, do yourself a favour though, man. If you want to have a laugh at a good Australian B-grade movie, which terrified me when I was a little tacker at the drive-in, it's a movie called Razorback.
I knew you were going to say that.
You remember that?
I knew you were going to say that. I just went, he's going to say Razorback.
I went to my uncle and aunt, who are probably 10 years older than me, they were good enough to drive, and they had to babysit me one night. So there was a double feature at the drive-in, and one of them was Conan the Barbarian, which, blew my mind. And then the next one was Razorback. And dude, I'm telling you, I've never been more terrified in a movie than that. The only other one, and here's an exclusive for you. The only other one other than Razorback that terrified me, and I still can't watch it to this day, is E.T. E.T. absolutely horrified me. I don't know what it was, man. It was the I was like 5 years old.
Morgan knows.
Walked out of the cinema, man. Walked gone. Mum and Dad were like, "Where's he going? Out of there, man. I've only ever seen like half hour of ET and I can't take myself back to watch it."
So before we cut out,
That's gold.
I'll tell you a true story about, since Razorback is actually about a boar, I'm assuming, like a pig.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I grew up hunting with my dad. Like when, it started when we were young. I mean, quail and fox and muskrat and all kinds of other stuff, because we lived on a farm when I was a kid, and in the 80s you would take the pelts and you would still sell them. There were still people that bought, full pelts and stuff. And at least by us anyway. And as I got older, it didn't stop. I didn't do it as much, you know what I mean? But, a whitetail deer and stuff like that. Well, I remember I was like 14 and my dad was like, well, I'm not a fan of gator hunting. I like reptiles. I can't, and to each their own, you know what I mean? I'm not a fan. And just because I've always had them, in my life, at some way, shape, or form. I've always had big lizards in my house, whether it was iguanas or guanas or anything. We always had stuff. And anyway, so we go boar hunting one time. I was like 14. And my dad was like, hey, look, and now you go out with the dogs, right? You're going out with dogs to go after these pigs. They're big pigs. And, a lot of people think, it's a pig. It's a pig. Now, it's like 400 pounds and it's going to kill you, if you get too close to it, right? So it's like, my dad thought it was the funniest thing in the world. I didn't see the pig. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it. Didn't know it was there. So he's like tripping out because he's like, hey, you got to move. You got to move. You got to move. And I'm 14. And I'm going, oh my God, where am I going? You know what I mean? And I went up a banana tree, right? Like up a banana tree. And I don't know if you've seen a banana tree, but they're real sharp, like real sharp. So like, it's not like, it's almost like a palm tree, but it's sharper as you're trying to climb it. So I got these gloves on and it's shredding these gloves, as I'm going up this tree. And I'll never forget, it left and my dad was laughing his ass off that I couldn't get out of the tree. Couldn't get out. I was literally, my hands were stuck in, like, the stuff was in my skin and my hands were stuck up there. And he thought that it was just my gloves. And he was like, all right, kid, come down. And I'm like, I can't come down. And he was like, you got to come down. And I was like, I literally cannot come down. You know what I mean? And he was like, just tear it. Not, this is my dad. You know what I mean? If he tells me to do it, I'm going to do it. That should be okay, right? So I'm about 15 feet up in the air. And I pulled. And in those movies where you see the blood go, like shoot out of what just happened? All I can remember is the blood shot out and I fell like 15 feet onto my back. And
ouch.
I had never been so terrified in my life because I couldn't breathe. The wind had been knocked out of me. And I thought this pig was going to come back and gore me while I was laying on the ground, And I swear I'm looking around. The dogs look like they're laughing at me. They're just big old mouths just wide open and stuff. And I was like, I hate you all. Like all of you right now. But yeah, it tore my hands to shit, man. But we ended up we got 2 of them that day. But it was like, I never did it again because I was scared to death. I was scared to death the pig was going to get me. That's like fishing in gator country. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm cool. I like fishing and whatnot. But, you get big gators and, I'd rather look at them from a distance. It's like, it's not like you're getting, a big salties or anything. You know what I mean? It's nothing like that. But it's still big enough to take you under if you get the opportunity, So, but yeah. I definitely think I'd rather deal with an alligator than a crocodile, though, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
All day long, But we had this one, we had this place, and I don't know if you guys have them, but we had this place called the Alligator Farm in Florida. And you would go, and they hundreds of gators, because that's where they take all the nuisance gators, too. They take them to this place where it's like a zoo almost, right? It's a herpetological park as well. So they're taking care of animals and rehabbing animals and stuff. So you go in there, though, and there was this, and he died years ago, but they had this thing, this saltwater croc called Gomec, and it was literally like 28 foot long and just built like a brick shit house. Like you could have easily like stood and put your, like, if he opened his mouth, you could stand and touch the top, barely touch the top of his mouth. You know what I mean? It was such a beautiful animal. And they ended up stuffing him and putting him out in it. And people would freak out that had never been there before because they'd come around the corner and he's just sitting there with his mouth open like he's just gotten out of the enclosure. Mad funny. But yeah, man, I'm super excited. You know, you guys will get me on a harangue. So I really appreciate your time, Morgan, very much. I've had a great time talking to you. And it's been quite the experience because it's always different. I mean, these guys can attest to it. It's always different to the people we have on the show. You know, everybody has their own way of doing things, just like anything else. But as long as the story is original, it's an amazing experience for us, just as much as it is for anybody else. Because we get to see like the passion when you speak, which makes such a difference. You know, like I mentioned, smiling when you talk about your product. You know what I mean? Mirth. Oh my God, just the mirth that you have when you speak about it, and it's very powerful. Even the music too, man. You talk about your music, it lightens the tone around you. You know, and it's good. It's a good feeling. Embrace that, man. Embrace that with your writing. Embrace that with your dealings in this industry. And you'll go far, man. It's going to be a good time. I look forward to watching where you go with it. And I'm going to get myself a copy of the Rust book because I'm really excited about it.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, man.
Very humbling, but yeah, great fun. And I'm super looking forward to the next few years, what happens, where it all goes, meeting new people, learning as much as I can, all that stuff. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Well,
and I've shared your link as well, just so you know.
Cool.
Although I'm a little over the shop because I'm still centered on that ET comment, but sorry, Lee. Sorry, Lee. That's still
probe is what
I'm trying to understand that. I really am, but I can't understand it. But
Shane, I don't understand it.
But
myself.
then again,
I've kept myself up some nights, man, wondering about it 30 years later. I still haven't got the answer.
So
But then the next one, the never-ending story. That big white bloody snaky dog, man, freaked me out of there, gone.
No, I was going to help you for a minute. I was going to get in on that. I can't get on that one. Falcor.
I'd also like to say that is the never-ending story is the biggest sales pitch Wooly pulled over everyone's eyes in the history of film, man. The never-ending story. Get out of here. It was 90 minutes long. Done. Hey, who came up with that?
All right, I got one for you to even you out, okay? I can't get down with the never-ending story one. Whatever. I can get down with the anal probing alien that's scary. I got that. I get it. It's like I can find your butt in the dark with my glowing finger. I'm down. I'm scared of that guy too. I don't want to But that being said, until I was in my mid-30s, I was terrified of clowns, like absolutely horrified of clowns. Because, you know, as a kid, they always tell you to, you know, stay away from strangers, stay away from things that are not normal, you know. And a clown to me is like the most abnormal thing that I could have ever imagined. You know, big honking nose and hair and trying to get me to come over there and get some candy or a balloon or some shit. Bro, you are out of your mind. I'm not coming over there at all. You know, until I met Jim and dealt with Jim, and I'm not scared of clowns anymore. I still don't want anything to do with male clowns, though. You know what I mean?
Especially ones called Jim.
You guys, you guys have got this like fun rivalry thing going on that I can't even begin to mess with. But yeah, so that's my scary thing: bulbous noses and weird hair.
See, mine's more normal. Mine was Jaws. I wouldn't have a bath for months.
Oh, yeah.
Showers I could do, but baths, no, I couldn't get in that water.
Man,
Jaws as a kid, Jaws scared the hell out of me as a kid.
Well, you live in Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I lived out bush. There was nowhere near the ocean.
Well, Well, I mean, to be fair with the tub scary thing, they put out a movie called Piranha 3D. Made sure it had 2Ds because it was boobs on the cover of the film. But they the Piranha 3D, and then there was Piranha Triple D after that. But it literally was coming up out of the bathtub, like,
oh no way,
yeah, like it swum up through the pipes and stuff into the tub and ate the person in the tub. Yeah, that was wild. You know what I mean?
No,
There's another one where it swam up some chick's hoo-ha. That was pretty scary too, though. I don't want nothing to do with that. Not great. You don't want that. I promise. No. It looked rather painful.
Yes. Do you know the original Piranha? Am I correct in saying that was James Cameron's first directing feature? Because I think they had a director at the time and he was visual effects artist, and the director had a creative difference. Anyway, and James Cameron moved on in there. And that was his first film directing credit, I'm pretty sure I've read somewhere.
1978, directed by Joe Dante.
Joe Dante.
Yeah, he also did Gremlins.
Yeah, it's another movie I didn't like. What about Piranha 2? Check that one.
All right, hold on.
Because I know James Cameron's tucked in there somewhere.
All right, Piranha 2, The Spawning. James Cameron, yes, sir.
Oh, there you go.
Yep, Piranha 2, The Spawning. We had
Spawning.
We had some of the best B movies.
How crazy is that, though, eh? James Cameron starts on that, and then he's off and running, and he's James Cameron.
Oh, Critters.
We talked about
Critters. Wow. That's cool.
Yeah, oh man, I've got props all over this room. Like all over this room. There's there's all kinds of stuff within like reach.
Oh, that movie freaked me out.
Yeah. Oh, Hellraiser? Hellraiser was so well written, though. I mean, if you were going to write a porn, but not be a porn, but still push toward people that liked porn in the 80s, it would be Hellraiser. You know what I mean?
See, I was a kid, I didn't see that. All I saw was freaking weird torture and stuff.
Yeah. So, well, his stuff was literally, if you read any of the novels or anything like that, it's all a reference to sexuality. It's wild. His mind is out there, but it was really well written to be a scary movie that involved that. You know what I mean? Like, I remember as a kid watching her, like, hey Ozzy. 1, 2, 3. All right, love you. Go on. All right, Todd, you got all these.
Oh, goodbye.
So, but the fact that she was kissing like the corpse and stuff in that movie, and the blood was all over her face. Between that scene, it messed me up. Like, I used to read when I was a kid. I've been reading novels. I started with Jurassic Park in like 3rd grade and finished it in a week. There's like, it's just, I enjoy it, and that's why Rust has caught my attention so much. But there's that particular scene, and then the Event Horizon.
Yeah.
So there was a scene in the novel that was barely touched on in the film, where they were eating each other while they were copulating. And it was, as a kid, I was like 12 years old and reading that going, this is the scariest thing I've ever read in my entire life. She's like an eyeball while she's like, and I'm like,
wow. See, I haven't read the book or seen the movie, so
Event Horizon,
going on.
It's a great film. It's an absolutely great film. They just re-released it, if I'm not mistaken, on Blu-ray not long ago, maybe a year.
Okay, cool.
But it's a great film. If you're into horror and good writing, it's a really, really good movie. It's one of those that'll make you think about what you're reading or what you're writing or watching, whatever, what have you. Great stuff. If you're into that kind of the sci-fi horror stuff, Oh, there's the dog.
Like one of those, you're on that sort of talk there, the one image from when I was a kid, from like, obviously I've mentioned it 1,000 times, I'm a huge Dune fan, whether that's the novels or the David Lynch movies and stuff.
Yeah,
that's like my thing. And little shop of horrors.
Right.
Nice.
Yeah, there's, like I said, there's all kinds of stuff floating around here.
Do you remember that scene, if any of you have seen the movie, where the Baron Harkonnen is first introduced, and David Lynch brought in something to the movie that's not touched on in the books. He brought several things in, but one was the heart plugs that the slaves of the Harkonnens used to have. And the Baron Harkonnen floats up and he covers himself in this oil because Giedi Prime, the planet, is an industrial planet. So, you know, I don't know what he was doing with the oil, but, you know, getting all down with it. And he goes, yeah, pretty much, Dustin. And he goes up to this dude who's got this heart plug and he's, you know, doing some rather sensual things. And then he just pulls his heart plug out. And and my description of the scene is not as accurate as what the film is, but if you watch the film and you watch that scene, I was about 5 or 6 years old when I saw that movie, and I remember being like, but then it was
individual. Like he's a big boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not like some like sensual dude or anything. He's a big old boy. He's all yeah. This is not great.
Yeah.
It's not great.
Well, and Dune ended up, I still visually remember, you know, Morgan's obviously seen it, you know, where Paul rides the big worm and everything, and they recognize him fully after the Water of Life as the Kwisatz Haderach, and there's just, and that bloody prophecy scene, the Brian Eno music just cranking out behind that moment and stuff where the Fremen unite. Oh man, magic's that stuff.
Well, you know, that's got a new one coming out. They've got, and it's actually directed by
Denis Villeneuve.
Right? Isn't it Dave Bautista that's doing that? The new
Yeah,
director?
he's playing Raban. Yeah. And obviously, hey Morgan, you're obviously a Dune fan. You've read Dune, etc. Have you?
I have. Yes.
Got a question for you. I'm going to give the man a go because, you know, like he's a big star and everything at the moment. I like the guy. Never really saw old Aquaman as Duncan Idaho.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew.
Because when they cast him, if you've read further than the first novel, spoilers for people, bugger it. Basically, the Kwisatz Haderach at the end of the Dune series is revealed to be Duncan Idaho. Now, with them casting Momoa, they're obviously giving him and saying, hey, if we get through 6 or 7 of these movies, you're going to be the man at the end of it, you know, like the hero sort of thing. And I'm going to give him a go, that I always saw him as a bit more of a, you know, skinny, athletic swordsman, you know what I mean? Like a fencer type dude, not really someone that was of large, bulky size, you know, like Conan type look thing, you know?
Yeah.
Thoughts more?
It's probably a bit of what's hot right now, overriding casting on what would actually work. And it's that whole thing about, you know, you put a big enough star in to drag people into the cinema, but you're dealing with something like Dune, which has such a massive and loyal following, and most of that following have either seen the Lynch movie or they've read the books. So that's a hard one. I saw the trailer and it looked pretty good, and I was kind of excited by it. But it's a hard one to do, I think, because it's been around for a while, man. It's, you know,
1965, man. Nebula and Hugo Award-winning science fiction novel of the year winner. And he wrote that in 3 parts, and the first time it got published was in a car manual magazine because no one else would publish it. and the car manual magazine didn't have enough content for 1 month. So they asked him to split it into 3 stories and they'd publish it. He finished it, and then it got picked up by the publisher, who decided to combine it into the 3 books. So Dune was originally written as, when you read the book, the first book I think is called, they've got names like one's the Messiah, what the 3rd book's called the Kwisatz Haderach, 2nd book something else. I can't really remember those details, but yeah, man, he wrote that book for like 20 years, man. He got rejected like 35 times, man. No one would touch him, until a car manual magazine publisher just went, yeah, okay, give it a go.
Give it a go.
That's mad.
Crazy, yeah. But that's what we get back to earlier, is like, just some things pop up. Like even James Cameron, visual effects artist, director, leaves Piranha 2. Okay, like, I've never done anything like this before. I'll just direct, and then, mate, like 2 years later, he's got Terminator, and then, like, I bet you when he had his breakfast that morning, he never picked that, So,
Jesus, how many books are there in this series?
In Dune, the original author Frank Herbert wrote 6, and then he left like 10,000 pages of notes, and his son became Brian Herbert was a writer, and he's really good mates with another writer called Kevin J. Anderson, who's a really popular sci-fi writer in the world, and they combined to basically go through all of these notes that his dad left, and they spent a couple of years collating, talking over the internet and stuff, and then they've just produced prequels. They finished the original series, which was just dead in the water until they found these. No, apparently there was in, here you go, the old cliche. It was in a, what do they call, you go to a bank and you pull, you get
safety deposit box.
Yeah. And old Frank had kept like 2 safety deposit boxes, and they got sent, if memory serves me correctly, they got sent like the month, you're overdue on this safety deposit box by 6 months, and the son was like, what, like, went to the bank and paid it up and opened, what's in here, Dad left me something, and there's like 10,000 pages of manuscripts for the universe of Dune, man. And so, that's how
so it's about like, so it's I always thought it was like a religious type of text, like it was very I've never read, you know what I mean? But it was always in like I said, I grew up in like a Catholic household, you know what I mean? And it was always in that, hey, this is safe reading type of area. So I think I just assumed it was like a sci-fi religious book, you know what I mean?
You know how accurate you are there, Dustin, is when I was in primary school at a Catholic, Christian Brothers school, in our library were the first 3 books of Dune.
Yeah.
And I was in primary school when I first came across it. So, you're picking that was my experience. I'm in a Catholic school at like 7 or 8.
Right.
There's the first 3 books of Dune,
That was my assumption because of that. That was the vibe I got. I never got into it, but that was the vibe I got, because you're putting one thing together with another, and I'm probably way off base, but that's where it was at for me. But I just was looking. The very last title is called Sandworm. Sandworm Hunter.
Sandworms of Dune.
There you go. Sandworms of Dune. Probably, Dave, but that's just what I recall. You know what I mean? So I very well may have mixed them up as a kid. You know what I mean? But I never went back to look, because that was my assumption. You know what I mean? And I had moved so far away from that I just never got back to it. But the concept of the sandworm is a very cool idea to me. You know what I mean? Because that it harkens back to Beetlejuice for me, and my family's big horror fans, and I know that people don't consider Beetlejuice a horror, as well as it even had its own cartoon show, its own comic books, its own action figures, so on and so forth. It's a very prominent title, you know what I mean? But if you look at Beetlejuice and what it is and what the character is, it's terrifying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To us, it was very interesting because it was terrifying. You know, and who doesn't want to dance every time that song comes on now? You know what I mean? Like Jesus, everybody around the world is like, oh, I know that one. Da 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 banana. You know what I mean? You know, it's like it's just that relevant in society. But that had sandworms in it. You know what I mean? It had the ones that were trying to eat Beetlejuice at the very end of the film, but they were very prominent in the cartoon show. Like he would get thrown into that desert and they'd come to eat him. And I always, I thought that was cool. And that's how I look at sandworms. But I really need to check these books out because the sandworm thing is cool to me. I think that's pretty interesting.
All right, cool.
I highly recommend it. In actual fact, there's an adaptation of the David Lynch film that Marvel brought out. And memory serves me correctly, it was written by the old legend Doug Moench. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Moench, and done by the legendary Bill Sienkiewicz.
Really?
He did the artwork, and
we just did a signing with him last year. Through Cowabunga, we did a mail-in signing for him that was really, really cool. So.
Yeah, he's a hell of an artist, man. That dude, jeez, he's very, very talented. That guy,
really nice guy. That went through. Kyle did all that, but it was really, really cool. Really good turnout for that. But I am running on fumes right now, gentlemen. So I will
beat me to it.
Later. It's always a pleasure, you guys. Morgan, it was really, really nice to meet you. I really hope you continue to follow this. Because I feel like you've really got something, man. So embrace it, have a good time with it, and don't let anybody stir you away from it. I think you've got it, bro.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, looks awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Good on you, Dustin. Morgan, mate, thank you very much for today. Very insightful, and as Dustin said, only forward. Keep going.
Cheers.
And if you need if you want to reach out, mate, you know where we are. So
beauty. Cheers. Thanks,
Thank you very much. And see everyone out there.
See you guys.
See you, everyone. Have a good day. Have a good weekend. And to everyone in America, have a good Friday night.